Leaders of the Democratic Party gathered in Washington Wednesday for the We the People Summit. Among those present were Senators Bernie Sanders, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, and Elizabeth Warren. All are also considered 2020 presidential hopefuls. Groups such as Planned Parenthood and Move On organized the event. CBS News political correspondent Ed O'Keefe was there, and he joins me now from Washington. All right, Ed, so what is this meeting really all about?
Well, it's actually officially a meeting of the Communication Workers of America, which holds an annual summit here in Washington to get their members to meet with members of Congress. Lots of organizations do this. What they did a little differently this year, though, was team up with other liberal organizations to essentially use their manpower and their strength in numbers to get what was, so far this year at least, one of the marquee speed dating events, if you want to call it that, for Democratic candidates. You had Bernie Sanders, as you mentioned, Elizabeth Warren, Kirsten Gillibrand, Kamala Harris, Luis Gutierrez, who we should mention as well, who are all talking about, or at least mulling, a potential 2020 presidential run. So they all came to basically kiss the ring and remind this crowd, which serves as foot soldiers and activists and door knockers all across the country, that they stand with some of the most liberal ideas out there that are being pushed by Democratic groups.
Yeah, well, Senator Warren said she was attending the summit because it was about being with working people. But tell us more about the organizations hosting it and why these senators in particular attended.
Yeah, so you had CWA, you had the Service Employee International Union, you had the group called Indivisible, which is that national network of grassroots organizations all across the country that really sprang up right after Donald Trump's election, Planned Parenthood, and a host of other liberal groups. And again, all of them are the folks that organize rallies in cities and states across the country that end up sending out activists to knock on doors that you might run into on the street asking you to sign a petition. And they all sort of came together here to hear from what in essence are essentially some of the party's rock stars, the ones that once they get around to going to New Hampshire and Iowa and other early primary states are going to draw big crowds, because these are sort of seen as people that Democrats want to hear from across the country. I remember being in Iowa last summer and talking to folks who'd say, we can't wait until Kirsten Gillibrand comes to Iowa. We can't wait until Kamala Harris shows up here. Part of the reason they're not coming yet is because in the case of Warren and Sanders and Gillibrand, they all face re-election this year, so they got to worry about their home state. But nobody, of course, is really overtly campaigning yet for president. This is a good excuse to try out some talking points, maybe see if some sound bites catch fire with the crowd, and then, you know, just sort of pay it forward in hopes that these groups remember that they were here in 2018 when it may come time later for them to come ask for their support.
Well, you asked Senator Cory Booker about what it means to be a Democrat. Here's some of what he said.
We've all got to be about patriotism before we are about party. We've got to be about people before we're about partisanship.
So it was interesting to hear that. Is there a sense that there is a vision yet that has been a consensus vision or view on how best to approach 2020?
No, the vision thing is a real problem for Democrats, whether it's Cory Booker, whether it's somebody running for re-election in the Midwest. It's a question I like and will continue to ask any Democrat you meet who's running for office this year and who's thinking about 2020 is, you know, what does it mean to be a Democrat? I think Democrats will tell you publicly and privately, Republicans are better, at least pre-Trump, and maybe even now, better at knowing what they are for. They are for lower taxes. They are for a strong military. They are for limiting abortion rights or eliminating it outright. Democrats, you know, I'm for the little guy. Obviously they want to defend the Affordable Care Act. They want to push for a higher minimum wage. The fight over whether you're for Medicare for all or for something short of that is kind of a litmus test issue right now. They obviously defend abortion rights. But you know, we find historically when you look at midterm election results that part of the reason the party that's not holding the White House ultimately wins is because they succeeded in delivering some kind of affirmative message about what they want to do should they retake control of Congress. Right now, you get beyond the Donald Trump discussion and it sort of scatters among Democrats about what exactly they should be emphasizing, what they should be for, what they should be focused on. Even on questions of would you ever consider impeachment. A big group of people say yes, others say you have to, others are saying you got to wait until the special counsel finishes the investigation. So this is what happens when a party's out of power. But given that they're Democrats and have a penchant for being a little less organized, it's a conversation that continues and one for which there is no clear answer.
Well, the senators also commented on President Trump's summit with Kim Jong Un. Let's listen to some of that.
Sure.
We know what the president gave up for the United States. We know that he blindsided our allies. But there's no evidence that North Korea has given up anything. They made promises to make more promises.
Look, it's unfortunately a lot of sizzle but no steak. And more than that, I worry that he's given up a lot now. He literally almost validated him.
So I'm grateful that he is making the effort to try diplomacy and to try to bring people together towards a peaceful resolution. He did not necessarily put in the planning and the work that you would have expected before, and this is the very issue that we probably should have had hearings on, had discussions about, and really fully understood what would it mean to give this up in exchange for denuclearization in North Korea.
So, Ed, how should we interpret those reactions?
I think it was notable, Elaine, that all of them sort of tipped their hat to the president for at least trying diplomacy. What they worry about is that he may have given away the store and not gotten back much of anything from the North Koreans. And you've heard the criticism all week that basically what the president got was a great photo op and the same assurance that North Korean leaders have given American presidents before, only to have them withdrawn. So there's a big desire among members of both parties to make sure that administration officials, especially Secretary of State Pompeo and eventually Pentagon officials, come to Congress and explain what exactly the U.S. is going to do in exchange for getting North Korea to give up its nukes. Also, a big push to make sure that there's some system in place to actually verify that they have been eliminated. And the administration so far, at least, has been very reluctant to discuss those details. So you can bet that those Democrats are going to continue to talk about it. In each case there, Booker, Warren, and Gillibrand serve on either the Foreign Relations or the Armed Services Committees, the two committees in the Senate at least that are likely to hold hearings on the potential changes in U.S. policy towards North Korea and towards military presence in the Korean Peninsula. So I would expect that all of them, especially if they're thinking about 2020, are going to find ways to call out their concerns with what the president did this week.
2020 will be here before we know it. Ed O'Keefe.
Never too soon to talk about it.
Never too soon, of course. Ed O'Keefe in Washington, thanks so much.